Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Impact and Influence series with Regrowth. Today, we've got Anna Egri with us from the Real Estate Employers Federation. How are you, Anna?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You are the world's busiest human. I literally have been trying to book this meeting with you for 6 months. How have you been so busy? What have you been doing?
Oh, a few different things. I've been on the roadshow with REI at the moment around New South Wales.
How many sites?
How many? Oh, I think up to 16. So we've got a couple more to go, about 3 more. So we're getting there. And then just other sort of presentations for different groups.
Awesome. So guys, Anna and I used to work together. I had the privilege of meeting Anna when I was a general manager at Dow Jones Real Estate, and Anna and I worked together. Anna was our HR governance and compliance manager, which was amazing. I learned lots from Anna and learned how dumb I felt when someone walks in and says, I've got a degree in commerce and business, and she's got a grad diploma in legal practice. Did I miss anything there, Anna?
And law.
And law. So incredibly smart. And I think one of the great things I loved working about with you is we'd kind of look at it from, the legal aspect, which is obviously your job and your background and your creds. And then we'd sort of look at trying to apply it in practice. Because as we all know, real estate is not always black and white.
That's right.
There's sometimes a bit of grey area. I know with the law there's not grey area, but situations for when I retire and I write my Netflix series, some of the stuff is just not covered by legislation. But I've been dying to catch up with you, and we get between 6,000 and 10,000 people download and listen to these interviews every time we post them over a couple of weeks. So I really wanted to share with everybody what you're seeing out there at the moment. Common mistakes made, so we all learn from it. But I probably just wanted to start with what are you seeing out there in the climate at the moment with your members or overall in relation to legislation? What's top of mind for you currently?
Yeah, so probably right now with the end of financial year coming up, it's things like obviously the super increases and the wage increases. So we're just waiting on Fair Work actually to release a bit more on that. So it's those kind of things, but then also your stock standard employment dramas, I guess. So it's still a lot of things about recruitment, onboarding, making sure the contracts are right from the get-go, because I think a lot of the time people do miss, or they want to recruit fast, so they miss things like contracts or job descriptions, which sort of set up the relationship, but then down the track it can cause problems if they're not there. So it's managing those situations. And then also I think also coming out of COVID, there's still some things around flexibility and trying to get staff back at work and trying to find the right balance between working from home and in the office.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? And working with me was a bit of a nightmare. I like to move pretty quickly. So it's probably a really good example, actually, of principles that, and particularly 70% of our industry, I think, is the number are selling principles and moving quickly and recruiting on the fly. And something you and I used to see quite often in our travels, and I think still do now, is people hire people without a contract or without a JD.
Absolutely. And the weird thing is, you don't in Australia have to have a contract for an employee. You have to have a commission structure.
You have to have a contract by law?
No, not in real estate in Australia. You've got to have a commission agreement. So if it was a com-only employee or there's some sort of bonus structure, you do. Otherwise, you don't. But it's like you said, everyone moves so quick, and I think at the moment it's really hard to find a good candidate. So you want to lock them in and get them started as soon as possible. And that's where sometimes those things get missed.
Yeah, okay. And on that, commission only, so I know, you and I always get phone calls about employing commission only salespeople. What would you say to people that are listening around that?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Like, we're the only industry to have it in Australia. Real estate's number one with it. The only thing would be there's all these different sort of rules or hurdles an employee must jump over to meet the criteria and get onto that commission only arrangement. So not to plug Reef, but if you have any concerns, give Reef a call, because it can be a bit complex, but really once you have a few steps in place and checklists, it's not that hard, and it's a great way to employ people who meet the criteria.
Listen, I'm going to plug Reef because it is an absolute no-brainer. So, I think for the amount of untapped advice that you can get and the tools and templates, and you've even got a HR platform, I believe, haven't you, Anna?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
What's available within that platform? Because I think you've got so many members that don't even realise that that's there.
Yeah, so it's a cloud-based program, so you can access it anywhere, but it's got about 150 templates on it. So all your employment agreements, job descriptions, policy and procedures manual, which I will say, we're getting a lot of calls with fair trading coming through offices, and you obviously need the supervision guidelines, but then you also need the employment policies and procedures. So all of them are on there as well. All the updated rates of pay. So it's a whole suite of different documents, but really useful to use. And once you have that, you can download it, put on your letterhead and just send it off.
I think that's interesting because a lot of people think when they've got the supervision guidelines in their office, or they've bought a policies and procedures from some of the leading bodies in our industry around, how to conduct open homes, how to handle sales inquiry, underquoting, and all those sort of things, they're covered. But tell us around, what are the expectations, and what are the things that you would recommend or are covered in your policies and procedures with reference to employment law?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, having a manual is best practice, and would say everyone should have one. But there's a few main policies which, if you don't have legally, it's a problem. So work health and safety is a major one, and that covers things like going to open homes and incident reports, and what do you do for staff members injured, or also a client or another agent on the property. Then the other one that's been a big ticket item, and you might have heard about it with the Respect at Work bill that came in, is discrimination, bullying and harassment, which is unfortunately an area we're seeing a lot more of. But we have developed at REI a new policy that tackles that, and it's national, so applied to all employees across Australia. But just having those two ones are really the main ones in the office, but also just having a whole suite, because if you do want to performance manage or upskill the team, and they say, well, what are the expectations? They don't know. It's having that manual in place to refer back to. And you can always update it with the times and evolve it. Like the social media one's a huge one. We're constantly updating that to capture all the new types of TikTok and social media platforms.
It's ever evolving. And I think, people, it's like going into a marriage, right? People going with the very best of intentions, but it's when things go pear-shaped that, things come undone. And I think all those things that you've spoken about, so many things can happen at social events or conferences or getaways, and it's very, very important that as principals of business, and if you are contractors or licensed agent working under a brand, that you've got those own things for yourself. So if you employ people separately to your entity, you are the licensee in charge, you're the Class 1 license holder, you are liable for your team and your people and your employees.
Exactly.
And a lot of offices that I go into, where they have people that, their own brand and contracted to an entity, don't seem to think that the supervision guidelines and policies and procedures apply to them, and that they can use the parent company that they have the contract with. And it's just not the case. So, Anna, do you see many of those sales agents that hold their own Class 1 and their own corporation as members of REIF, or is that something that is a weakness in our industry?
A little bit of both. I think people think, to be a member of REIF, you need to have a big office, but really most of our members are actually, one person with a couple of employees. And that's probably one area that's really good for them, because they can outsource their whole HR function to us and have all those templates there. With conjunctional agents or independent contractors, it does help because, who else is there to go to? And often the franchise might not be able to provide that advice to them. So definitely it's a good, membership to have. I think it's just, it's another expense sometimes, but it is, for 12 months, it's not too costly at all. We're not for profit.
It is an investment. And guys, I think too, sometimes I see those particular models on an island, they're almost Switzerland when things go pear-shaped. It's like, well, that's your entity. But I think also that, the parent company needs to make sure that they've got all the appropriate insurances and policies and procedures in place to protect everybody. As I said earlier, we could write a Netflix series on working in real estate. Everyone's got a story, and I almost think every Friday we should all break in the industry and write down a funny story or a learning from the week. But we don't want it to be, detrimental to our professionalism, and we want to make sure that we're all protected. What are sort of like 3 things to wrap? End of financial year, we'll be posting this in the next week or 2. What are the things that you think employers should be looking at or reviewing at end of financial year going into the new financial year to make sure that it's best practice?
Yeah, probably number one, like I said, the super and wage increases come into effect 1 July. So we've got a bit of time, but getting your house in order in relation to that. And most people have a software platform like Xero or NYB where it's pretty simple to get that organised. Secondly was what we discussed, policies and procedures. I think under the supervision guidelines, you've got to review them once a year, and you may as well do your employment funds at the same time. Just spend, a weekend getting it over and done with, move on. Don't have to do it for another year. And then finally, I think it's things like we're getting ready in the second half of the year for, CPDs coming up again next year, and a lot of people forget and leave it too late. So making sure, all your staff are compliant with that. And as an employer, it's something that you're also responsible for all your team members, but also team members remember where, your CPD certificates are and have them accessible and easy to find.
I think it's interesting. So I know that Fair Trading this year, as they should, went out, and the amount of phone calls that I had between the 20th and the 23rd of people wanting to, to do CPD or seeing what in fact should be in their staff register.
Absolutely.
It's very. What do you see as problems with that, Anna?
Finding it. Like I haven't had, people I've worked with in past lives calling saying, "Oh, I never got to keep it 3 years. Do you still have my copy?" And I think, "Oh no, I don't." So having it accessible, somewhere saving it. I think everything's so at the moment, it's all still on email, hard copy. It's a bit clunky, but storing it somewhere central, you can easily access it. Because I think that's what you're saying. Fair Trading just comes in, asks for it then and there, and you just need to be able to find it.
And I think clarity, there was a lot of confusion this year, clients of mine and people I've spoken to about what actual class of license they had, and then people that actually did the wrong courses for their continuing professional development. And, in some cases, Fair Trading have come down pretty hard on that. So I think making sure if I had an office again, being crystal clear that you guys actually know what's expected and what class and what professional development they've got to have. And that one, guys, that Anna was just saying about when someone leaves your organisation is making sure that you transfer them from an active employee across to someone that's left, because you do actually have to keep that for 3 years after people go. Yeah. And I find what you do fascinating, which is why I loved working with you, because, you kept me out of a lot of trouble when I was doing things. And look, I know that this isn't supposed to be a plug for Reef, but it's an absolute no-brainer for the investment, and it is a tax advantage. And for anyone that has been taken to Fair Work or had action taken against them, I think they wish they would have paid the membership. What is the membership annually if someone is interested in joining?
It's $1,200 including GST.
Too cheap.
Yeah, we're not for profit, but it means then we also lobby for the industry and do all the award changes. So yeah, it's pretty good value.
Well, I think it's fascinating that people don't realise how important it is for the lobbying that you do. Like your car allowance, for example. Yeah. Do you actually, before we go, do you want to talk about that? Because I don't think people would realise that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably one of the reasons we have a lot of sort of big commercial officers or developers on board is for that private tax ruling. And it just applies to REIF members, but it means as an employer, if you're a REIF member, you don't have to tax your employee's car allowance. And so it's a pretty good recruitment or incentive tool. So the take home pay is a bit higher. So it's been good, but it doesn't apply to REIF members because we have to apply each year for it. But it's a good bonus, I guess, with the membership.
I think there's a lot of people out there in our industry, Anna, that just assume that comes with real estate and paying the motor vehicle allowance without tax.
That's right. We sometimes get the call when the ATO is there and also quickly.
Terrifying call when you think if you've been in business for a certain period of time and you've just been doing that without being a member of the Real Estate Employers Federation. Super smart lady, someone that's had a lot of impact on my life. And look, if you ever get the opportunity to meet Anna or she's speaking at an event, please go. You won't be disappointed. Anna, is there anything you'd like to wrap with?
I think we've covered everything. I think, we've got a few exciting projects together on the horizon, which are coming up, and be happy to announce it shortly.
Absolutely. We will definitely share that with everyone in the next couple of weeks. But really just wanted to provide everyone with a little bit of education, a bit of framework about some things that they should think about in end of financial year, and hopefully keep everyone safe and the integrity of our industry where it should be. Anna, thank you so much for your time. Very grateful.
No, thank you for having me. Thanks.
See you later.